Hey everyone, welcome back to the Empowering Minds Mental Health Podcast. Today, I'm excited to have Peter Alexander with me. He's an author, laughter ambassador. I want to know more about that. And someone who really knows what it's like when life gets overwhelming. We're talking about stress, health, and how to find a little hope, some laughs, even when things feel heavy. Peter, thank you for agreeing to come on today.
Well, Jennifer, thank you so much for having me here. And I really appreciate your listeners' time as well.
Thank you. All right. So we're just going to jump right into it.
Right?
So many of us feel like we're being pulled in a million directions, wearing multiple hats between work, family, and everything else. All right.
Mhm.
So, what's one small, realistic step that someone can take when they feel that stress is just too much?
Yeah, it's a great question because what happens typically in that is we're stressed because all these different responsibilities are taking portions of our time and mind share. And so what I find that actually works very well, it actually is called the Eisenhower Matrix for focus, and it actually came from former President Dwight Eisenhower, and it's a very simple matrix that we can use. So you've got four quadrants, and in one quadrant is the do it quadrant, and basically the do it is there are going to be the things that are very, very important. You have to do them because they are the most important, whether personally or professionally, and they need to be your top priority. So, it might be for work, it might be something, that's due and it's a major assignment. That's obviously something that would be a high priority. But another one might be something like your bathroom where all of a sudden there's a leaky pipe. You better fix that because it's just going to
Yeah.
do a lot more damage. So that would be the do it quadrant. Then you have the second quadrant would be the decided quadrant. And the decided quadrant basically is the things that are important, but they don't have to be done right away. So, like at work, maybe it's a project that's due next week, or
Mhm.
if you're in school, a project that's due next week. It doesn't have to be done right away, like today, but it does need to get done. Or maybe you've got a loved one's birthday coming up in a couple of weeks. You need to buy them a gift, but maybe you don't have to do it today. So it's basically something where you need to do it, but you can schedule it for a little later so that you can free up your time again.
Mhm.
Then there's the delegated section where is there something that you have on your plate that you could ask somebody else to do. Maybe it's a coworker
Yeah.
who could help you out. Maybe it's a family member who could do a chore for you. If you're completely slammed, that's the delegated. And then there's the deleted quadrant. And the deleted one are the ones that are distractions that don't really help us. And a classic example of this might be gossiping. Because gossiping typically is something really negative, and you can go
Mhm.
down the rabbit hole with that. Or it could be something like, starting to scroll on social media endlessly. That can kill a lot of time. So if you have things like that that are that you're actually doing that you could put in the delete quadrant, then what you do is with that list of things that you have on your plate, if you assign it to each of those quadrants, what you're trying to do is get at least one or two things off your plate. And if you can delegate something, or you can delete something to gain back time, then what happens is when we're not so stressed about our time because of all of the things that we're supposed to do, our stress goes way, way down. So that's something that is a very simple thing we can do. Just you have your list and just assign it and see if you can find at least one or two things that can be delegated or deleted so that they can get off your plate.
I love that. And it's ironic that you said that too, because I had just said the other day, I said, well, I think around May 15th, I'm going to scale back on social media. I'm going to leave
Mhm,
my account active, but I'm deleting the apps from my phone. I'm just not going to be
mhm,
as active because I have a what do you call it? A professional page, and
mhm.
so I try to share content. And I was just sitting there the other day. I was like, this is getting to be a little bit too much right now. So I'm going to scale that back and focus in on some other goals or just self care. And
Mhm.
then I love this matrix that you're talking about. I, I
Yeah.
I didn't know it had a name for it, but 5 years ago, I had like multiple projects at work and I was overwhelmed. So I
Mhm.
came up with this colored folder system. Red
Mhm.
meant high priority, yellow meant priority, and green was like I had completed it. So it's interesting to know I just called it time management, but it's interesting to know that it actually has a name to it.
Yeah, and using the color scheme that works really well for people as well. And I think isn't it interesting how you just developed something that worked for you, and that's
Mhm,
the key. It may not be exactly like the Eisenhower Matrix, because if you just Google it, you'll see the matrix.
mhm,
But it's whatever works for you. And it's funny when you mentioned about the file folders. Back in the day, I'm still a very organized person.
mhm,
And I remember that, oh yes, I'm gonna before we had the computers with files and stuff.
mhm.
I'm dating myself. Yes, back in the Stone Age, but um, I would file things, and it made complete sense to me when I filed it. And then every now and then there'd be something where I go, I know I filed this, I have it somewhere, and I couldn't find it.
Yeah.
And then of course, when I didn't need it, I'd find it and I'd look at what I filed it under, and it made complete sense what I filed it under, but I didn't remember that's what I filed it under when I
Mhm.
needed it. So, you really have to practice these techniques to make sure they work well for you.
That is true. Oh my gosh, that is funny. And so my next question for you. So you've been in like high pressure situations where it feels like stress, like it just does not stop. So can
Mhm.
you share a moment from your own life where you kind of felt like you hit a wall and what did you do to pull yourself out of it?
Yeah, I always go back to 2008.
Hmm.
That was a perfect storm of stressful activities going on for me, both personally and professionally. And what ended up happening, all of a sudden, I started losing weight rapidly. And I thought that's really strange. I was in my mid 40s. I wasn't dieting. I was not doing any special exercise, just my typical exercise, and the weight kept on coming off. And so after I lost my 30th pound in 30 days, I decided to get some blood work done. And the doctors came back and told me, well, congratulations, you have stress induced diabetes. And here's the crazy thing. So, type A personality that I am, I didn't, want to learn more about diabetes. I just said, okay, give me whatever medication I need because I don't have time to deal with this right now. Anyone
Hmm.
else listening ever had to deal, said that to themselves? So what I did was I continued to burn the candle at both ends for another 10 years until I ended up in the emergency room 1 hour from being comatose with a severe case of diabetic ketoacidosis. And for those who don't know what that is, basically my body was eating itself alive because of my stress. And that was crazy. I ended up in the ICU, the one and only time in my life. I was there for several days. And yeah, I had done this to myself. No one else had done this to me. I allowed this to happen because I continued to put my responsibilities at work and other things in my life ahead of my health. And that's really a bad trade. And in fact, here's the craziest thing of all. So it was my second day in ICU. And, if anyone's ever had to be in the ICU or in the hospital for overnight stays, you don't sleep.
No.
People, the staff are constantly poking and prodding you.
Mm-hmm.
And so the at about 6 a.m., I get a text from my boss at this time, who was a micromanager. So if anyone's ever had a micromanager, you can appreciate this story. And the text that my boss knew that I was in the hospital, and the text says, "You have a webinar you need to run at 8 o'clock, 2 hours from now. What are you going to do about it?" And what a surprise. I didn't have my work laptop with me in the ICU. I did have my phone. And so I started pushing the envelope of what my phone could do to try and reschedule this webinar. And the nurse that was on staff at that time comes over and checks my blood. And when I was originally admitted to the hospital, my blood sugars were so high that the medical grade glucometers could not read them. So they had to manually estimate it in the lab. And they estimated my blood sugars to be 10 times normal. And so once I was in the ICU, my blood sugars had come back down into at least more reasonable. They were high, but they were, at least you could read them with the glucometer. And as she came over and checked my blood, and I'm sitting there with my phone trying to reschedule this webinar, my blood sugars, like a 90-degree angle, shot straight back up. And she says to me, just matter of factly, she says, "You realize that's what put you in this hospital bed in the first place," pointing at my phone. And that was like my epiphany moment. It was like, oh my gosh, I'm trading my health for my career. And that's a really bad trade. And so for the next couple of days, I just really sat there and just thought and thought and thought and realized for the first time in my life, I have to prioritize my health.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so glad I did, because I truly believe if I would have continued doing what I was doing up to that point, I would not be alive today.
Absolutely. That's why I stress to people that when they are dealing with stress, that it's very important to nip it in the bud right then, get you some help,
Mhm.
whether it fits meditation, a life coach, a
Mhm.
therapist. Get what you need. And I can somewhat relate to what you're saying, because I was dealing with chronic stress.
Mhm.
This was 2013, 14. I was a size 8. Chronic stress took me down to a size 3,
Oh.
4 in like a month's time.
Uh-huh.
And I was so stressed, I had to get 8 injections just to turn my neck. I had to get 3 on each side and
Mhm.
1 in each shoulder blade. And I don't care how much I ate, I could not gain any weight. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, because I went through that, when people tell me that I'm feeling stressed, I stress the importance of, you need to take care of that, because that's going to definitely impact you physically, but mentally as well too. Like, I had like severe
Absolutely.
brain fog. I remember I was sitting in the parking lot when I worked at IBM, and I remember I sat in my car and I cried. I was under so
Mhm.
much stress, I couldn't remember if I took the back road or if I took 85 interstate or interstate 40. I couldn't
Mhm.
remember.
Mhm.
I just knew I was in the parking lot, and I was like, I don't even know which way. I don't even know which way I came.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Your subconscious actually drove, actually, but in that case, that would have been your unconscious mind was driving, because we went, when we're so stressed, we often go into autopilot like you did.
Yep.
And, and it's crazy. I know I've had that happen to me as well when I'm overly stressed, because we can only do so much in our mind share.
Mhm.
And once it's overwhelmed, then the autopilot in our bodies takes over certain, mundane tasks like
Yep.
driving.
Absolutely. All right. So my last question, this is a good interview too. My last question, if someone is feeling completely stuck, they don't know where to start, what's one simple thing that they can do today to bring just a little bit more balance or relief into their life?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because there could be a lot of different reasons why somebody is stuck. Um,
Mhm,
but one of the things that typically causes that is we have fear. And we have fear about either trying something or fear of what will happen if we do this. And our inner critic inside of us, we all have that. Our inner critic, is actually a protection mechanism. It tells us, oh,
mhm,
don't do this because you might fail. Well, we need it for, very serious things like, you know, don't step off a cliff,
Hey, Pete,
um,
Pete, can you hear me?
what fear of failure and stretch ourselves. And if we're, yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, it was a bad
You can,
yeah, it was a bad disconnect there for just a
oh,
second.
gotta love the technology.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what happens is that when we have this fear of failure,
Mhm,
we can get ourselves stuck because we don't want to fail. We don't want to be embarrassed. But the
mhm,
problem is in order for us to grow, we have to be able to stretch ourselves even a little bit. And when we stretch ourselves, we're going into uncharted territory because we've never been there before. So, who does everything for the very first time perfectly? I don't know, not that many people. So, you have to realize that you're going to get, it's not going to go perfect every time. And instead of think about it as failing, what I like to look at it is it's, the universe giving us feedback that you need to try something else. And there is a very powerful question that you can ask yourself or you can ask someone else if they're stuck. And the question is, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? Because what's really great about that question is it opens up the world of possibilities. And I absolutely love that because it works for any age as well.
mhm,
And a great example is my youngest son. He, when he was graduated high school, I don't know what to do. And he was stuck. And I asked him that particular question, but I said, don't answer it right away. I want you to think about it, sleep on it, and tell me
mhm,
tomorrow. And he came back with three ideas, two of
mhm,
which were completely crazy, but one of them was, really doable. And
mhm,
so he started pursuing that. And so you just need to open it up because if we just sit there and go, oh, I'm stuck, I'm stuck, I'm stuck. Well, what does that do? That, is just basically bringing the negative energy, and
mhm,
negative energy compounded on negative energy compounded on negative energy, that's going to just make us stuck. So, think about that. The other thing too is I like to always think about when I'm fearful about doing something, instead of thinking about fear as a negative word, I like to think about it as an acronym, a four-letter acronym that stands for fictional evidence appearing real. Fictional evidence appearing real. And if you think about that, it's
mhm,
like, am I actually letting my mind, make a bigger deal out of this than it really is? Because think about that. If this happens a lot of times, if we're worried about having a difficult conversation with either a coworker, a family member, a friend. And what
mhm,
do? We sit there and we think, oh, it's going to go terrible. I don't know what to say, blah, blah, blah. And we're thinking about some horrible event. Okay, what makes you think it's going to be a horrible event? It's we're making this up inside of our heads. So that's the fictional evidence kind of thing. So if we can think about it from a little bit different perspective, and one great thing in that particular example that I've used many times in the past is, instead of worrying about and thinking about that conversation going terribly, I like to visualize 5 seconds after what I think the last word in that conversation might be, whether it's me saying it or the other person saying it. And then I visualize that other person smiling, shaking my hand, maybe giving me a hug. And then all of a sudden, wow, now my stress goes back down again, because I'm actually thinking about it from a positive outcome instead of trying to, manifesting a negative outcome, because all I think about is it's going to go badly. So all those different ideas are all mindset techniques, and they're very easy to do.
That's great advice. And I was sharing with someone about negative thinking. I saw this quote on social media, and it went something like, "If you knew how much negative thinking impacts you, you never think a negative thought again." And I
Oh
was like,
yeah. Yeah.
"That's true. It's so interesting." So, um,
And there's something that, on that point,
uh-huh.
going back to our inner critic,
Oh yeah.
if you start, if you think about it, if you were to say to someone else or talk as badly to someone else as you tell yourself, would you ever do that to someone else? No. So why do it to yourself? It's not worth it. Life's too short to just continuously beat ourselves up.
Right. And that's why I'm so glad that you agreed to come on, because my podcast is about the name,
Hmm.
Empowering Minds. So I'm trying to keep
Hmm.
a positive mindset through the podcast. And so lastly, I wanted to give you time if you had any resonating thoughts. You are an author, so I want you to talk about your book and where people can purchase it from,
Sure.
or if you have any contact information, things like that that you'd like to share.
Sure. Well, thank you for that. My closing thought that I would like to think is don't take your health for granted. And the reason is, we've all had, let's say, a flu at some point.
Mhm.
And if you think about, if it was a bad flu, think about how you felt with that bad flu. Did you have energy to do anything other than lie in bed? Probably not. Well, the reality is, if all you can do is lie in bed, you're no good to your career. You're no good to your loved ones. You're no good to anything. So
Mhm.
take care of your health. Don't trade your health for your career or anything else. And some people say, well, I got to take care of my family. Okay. So go back to the question. If you lose your health, what good are you going to be to your family? You have to take care of yourself. That's that classic airline thing where, put the mask on yourself before putting it on a child. And then I remember I had a stewardess who said, or someone acting like a child. But, you don't want to, you have to take care of yourself first, because your family needs you, and only you can take care of your health. So don't trade your health for other responsibilities. That is absolutely critical. And as
Great.
far as I'd love to connect with people, they can find me on my website, which is petealexander.com, petealexander.com. And that's where a link to my best-selling stress relief book is. I've got my TEDx talk on overcoming rejection and a lot of other fun things that people can do. And the whole thing about working on stress, you know, focus on doing something that takes 1 minute, couple minutes a day, because what's interesting about that I found with stress relief is that stress relief technique that I use may not work for you, Jennifer,
Mhm.
and one that you use may not work for me. So we have to find one that works for each one of us, one or two. And then once you find that, you run with it. The
Yep.
great thing is, you just it only takes a couple minutes a day, and if we utilize it on a daily basis, it becomes a habit. And once
Yeah.
it becomes a habit, then you're going to get the compound benefits over time. But you got to start. So that's definitely the message I want to pass on to people as well. Is don't say, oh, I'll do it when at a later time, because I did it, and unfortunately, I now have that chronic disease that I got to deal with for the rest of my life.
All right. This has been a great interview. Thank you so much for coming on. This helps me to continue to educate, break stigmas around mental health and empowering minds. So again, I thank you, and I'll be in contact with you soon.
All right.
All
Thank you
right.
so much. You have a great rest of your day, and thank
Same
you
with
for your
you.
listeners' time as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.